yourself.
Wholeness family. Family, as we continue on in the revelations that are continually coming forward, there are some things that are simplistic, easy to be understood, and others are not. And sometimes it needs a greater uh, time put on it in terms of trying to simplify it. There's always state unto us we need to keep it as simple as we can because we've always been a simple people. And in our simplicity, we have been manipulated. But nevertheless, we can't get complex, at the wrong time. We got to keep it simple. And as our knowledge continues to ascend, then we are able to grasp on a broader scale. But for us now, we got to keep it real simple. And it's always a challenge for every presenter or teacher is to try to keep things, where it's interesting for those that grasp things and those that not grasping so clearly and so fast to keep it interesting and keep them developing. So instead of developing ascending, I'll say that, becoming more conscious. So what we want to do today, just briefly, um, talk a little bit about a concept called gender. And you notice in the movie that we showed, the feminists on Block Y, um, that can very well be misunderstood. We want to do something with it here in the community. One of the brothers shared with me, but he thought, the same as I'm thinking, and you were thinking along the same way in terms of the misunderstanding or how it can be misled in terms of those men in jail. Now they're in jail. They women are now, being used to determine, you know, who should be an authority, and that was definitely not, what the men was talking about. But nevertheless, um, this whole feminist movement during the '60s, if you go back, it was just a term thrown out there, and we really didn't understand it. It's like various terms thrown out in the black community, mainly um, for reasons, that are very subtle, and very misleading for us. And one of them is the feminist movement. You know, but I never thought that women wanted to take over during the '60s when, Angela Davis and women was coming forward. As naturally as we now go back and think about these things, we can kind of see that it was never about woman taking over. It was about how women had been treated historically, and the energy that was, accumulating and beginning to come forward. It was coming into a cycle of time where women felt a little bit more freer, to express themselves about how they had been treated. So, with that said, I want to keep it very simple. Go back to something Abba Ben Amin stated about the power to define. The power to define is in the hands of evil men, has been and is a weapon of, control, and a weapon to deceive. And so, power to define. And when we look at this term, social construct, social construct, you've heard us use the term simulated reality. You hear us talking about social matrix and so forth and so on. All of this is just simply saying it is a copy of something that is inorganic, and it gives the appearance in many cases that it has to do with the exact, replication of the organic, which is not true. So organic and inorganic, two different things. One of the things I want us to remember about social matrix, social construct, simulated reality, all these terms, is that these are terms created by man for one purpose. And at the bottom line or at the midline, regardless of what they say, it has been about economics. It's been about economics. And I'm gonna read just a little something from something called social dominance theory, just to kind of give you an idea. Social construct, social dominance, social control, all of these terms, matrix, so forth and so on, simulated reality. It's important to keep the masses confused, and that keeps, you understand, with confusion, that keeps division. When there's confusion, naturally, that's going to create division. Social dominance theory is a theory of inner group relations that focus on the maintenance of stability of group-based social hierarchies. And that's a whole bunch that say it. Social dominance theory is a theory. Now, but, when we hear the term theory, say, well, it ain't real. Well, no, it ain't real. First of all, we've been taken out of the cycle of freedom, domesticated, but you don't use the word domesticated when you're talking about, people. You talk about domestication, you talk about animals, and then they try to say, well, animals and people it's all about confusion. Take my word for it. The theory of intergroup relation that focuses on the maintenance and stability, how to maintain and how to stabilize groups of based social hierarchies. So here we go now. That means then that within the social structure, whatever you want to call it, simulated reality, you want to call it matrix, you want to call it government, you're talking about somebody being under someone else and somebody controlling and maintaining that control through some kind of hierarchy. According to the theory, group-based inequalities are maintained through these primary intergroup behaviors. Intergroup behaviors, specifically institutional discrimination. Institutional discrimination. Aggregated individual discrimination. And behavioral symmetry. Social dominance theory processes that widely share cultural ideologies, i.e. legitimizing myth. Now, here's another term, myth. You hear the term mythology. You hear the term myth. So it's confusing. What is a myth? Is a myth real? Or is a myth an allegory depicting something? It's all about keeping the people confused, as I was stating. It's all about keeping the people under a state of confusion, but because it's about control. go on to say, legitimizing myths provide the moral, intellectual justification for these inner group behaviors. Now you're talking about moral, now you got laws established by the institutions that cause what you call intellectuality, you know, then used to justify these group-based behaviors. These are two functional types of legitimizing myths. One, hierarchy enhancing, and two, hierarchy attaining legitimacy myth. Hierarchy enhancing ideologies, i.e., racism, nationalism, contribute to greater levels of group-based inequality. So now, you remember last notes that I sent out, we were talking about cognitive enhancement. And we talked about the implication of it, and we talked about the objective of cognitive dissonance and how it would, you know, affect certain people. All of this is a very, very broad way of keeping humanity confused. It appears that, you know, the educational process is supposed to help you. But as Eitai been talking about compulsory education, one time didn't want you to be educated. Now it's compulsory that you be educated. You know, so you go on and on and on and on. That's why I said we have to keep this very simple. Other than that, now let me get into the gender part of it. Social dominance theory. This is the social dominance theory was first formulated by psychology professor Jim Sadinus, Sidanius, Sidanius, and Felicia Prato. The theory begins with the observation that human social groups tend to be organized according to group-based social hierarchies in societies that produce economic surplus. Surplus for who? You know, these hierarchies have a trimorphic or three forms to the structure. Trimorphic structure. This means that these hierarchies are based on one, age, i.e. adults have more power and higher status than children. Two, gender, i.e. men have more power and higher status than women. And three, arbitrary set, which are group-based hierarchies that are culturally defined and do not necessarily exist in all societies. Arbitrary set hierarchies can be based on ethnicity, whites over blacks,
yes,
in the US, religion, nationality, and so on. Human social hierarchies consist of hegemonic groups at the top and negative reference groups on the bottom. More powerful social roles are increasingly likely to be occupied by a hegemonic group. Remember, for example, an older white male. Males are more dominant than females, and they possesses more political power. The iron law of anarchy. Most high status position are held by males. And it goes on.
Nasik,
Yeah, Eitai.
this is very important. What you're going over, because what you just read and defined is found in Genesis, the 3rd chapter, starting in the 12th verse.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead with it. Go ahead.
How this social domination, this social gender, whatever, how the overarching hierarchical structure was set up.
Talk to me. Come on.
Now, not in the beginning, but
Right.
not in the beginning, but in the beginning of what? The
Right.
patriarchal, the male dominated system.
Absolutely right.
The verse 12, it's beginning the demotion of the feminine aspect. See, we have to get away, like what you're saying, from male and female like that,
Right.
and talk, because that gets you into social definitions, religious definitions, cultural definitions, and just like you just stated, these hierarchies
Right.
did not exist in all cultures.
Right.
So when we began, when we began in our mental process to shift this thing to a girlfriend, a wife, women in general, this is where we lose it.
Right. Right.
In verse 12, I just read it real quick because this is a point that we cannot overlook. And the man said, "The woman whom thou gavest to be with me, she gave me the tree, and I did eat it." And the Lord said unto the woman, "What is this that thou hast done?" And the woman said, "The serpent beguiled me, and I did eat."
There we go. There
And
we
the
go.
Lord and the Lord said unto the serpent, "Because thou hast done this, thou art cursed above all cattle, and above
Wow.
every beast of the field. Upon thy belly shalt thou go, and the dust shalt thou eat all the days of thy life." Now, the serpent, just like Ion Sophia, represents what? Wisdom.
Right.
So the wisdom of ascension was cursed. Number
That's so
one,
true.
"And I will put enmity between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed. It shall bruise thy head, thou shalt bruise its heel." Then unto the woman he said, "I will greatly multiply thy sorrow and thy conception." Now, this word sorrow now harkens back to Ya'al. I'm sorry, Debaoth rather. Debaoth.
Right.
Daba,
Right.
Daba,
Right.
that Yal Debaoth. This is this thing being put in place. What? Under the dominion of the energy that is over the simulated reality.
There you go.
And
Right.
so this hierarchy, we'll stop there, but I don't want to interrupt you that much, but it's very important. This hierarchy is being set up. Man on the top, God on the top, under him man, woman, and
Sure.
children, just like you're establishing.
No, but Eitai, that's excellent, and really we needed that to be, initially, when I started out, I have not, put together a class to bring that in, but that was
Right.
perfect point. And we got to remember now. You've heard me say these things numerous times, and naturally, when you hear it, but when put in the proper context, it may
That's
not have been in context to open up what we just opened up. But we got to remember that the whole concept of the Bible from 1611 up to what we are talking about, You got to go back to those dates that we keep talking about. And all of this was put in place to do exactly what we are talking about. And so when you got to the 19th century into the 20th century, these things are being taught within the social structure to guarantee that the confusion continues to what? Become acceptable and spread to the length and breadth of the earth.
That's right.
This is a major piece what we're dealing with.
Absolutely.
And trying to keep it, you know, in the simplistic mode that we can here. Continuing on, just to add to what Eitai is saying here, we're going to pick up here where it talks about, gender and dominance. Continuing on, it says, consistent with the assumption that male, now you say assumption, you know, because what makes a male have more, you understand, power to dominate because of his genitals over a woman's genitals?
Right.
You understand? What are we saying? Gender and dominance, consistent with the assumption that males tend to be more dominant than females. Social dominance theory predicts that males will tend to have a higher social dominant orientation, As such, males will tend to function as hierarchy enforcers.
That's
of course, what? He's going to what? Have the greater benefit.
Right.
Hierarchy enforcers.
Why would
that is right? That is, they will carry out acts of discrimination, such as systematic terror by police officers. Okay, and we see this happening now. But if a woman comes into the police force, they try to keep them out for many years. But when she come in order for her to take the job, she must act like a man.
That's correct.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, so this is why I was saying about this male, female, gender thing. We got to really, really think about this. And we got to get beyond this, because it's going to be misunderstood, and it'll create just as many problems or more, you know, trying to articulate a solution to the problem when you're using the same concepts and definitions that has been established by the problem makers trying to bring clarity to it.
That's right.
You know?
And
in other words, using duality to try to explain singularity and wholeness.
Right.
You know?
And using the same false history, false timeline.
Right.
It'll just end in confusion.
Absolutely.
Right.
It says, now this is this guy, Salinas in 1992, and the extreme examples of death squads and concentration camps.
Right.
Death concentration camp. This is supported by evidence such as police officers possessing measurably higher levels of social dominance, you know, organization. Social dominance theory positions that males in general will tend to have a higher social dominance orientation. Now, we're going to kind of jump over to give a little bit more clarity on that. They said, the reason, I mentioned earlier, the reason that social hierarchies exist in human societies is that they were necessary for survival of intergroup competition.
That's right.
During conflict over resources. Essentially, groups organized in hierarchies were more efficient at combat, at war, than groups who were organized in other ways. giving a competitive advantage to groups disposed towards social hierarchy. So it's all about what? Having an advantage.
That's right.
Now, let's think about this. We have to go back to race again. See, again, race is a social construction, of the matrix. If you want to talk about races, there's only one race, and that's the human race. What about the white and the black? We talk about colors now. We know we've defined what black was, and it had all the negative in it. It is obvious that it couldn't be talking about the color black. It had to be talking about the people that was black.
Mm-hmm.
So all of this is about control of the economy. We can now clearly see, as we've been taught on this line, we can see how the 1%, of the human family, controls, more wealth than the 99%,
That's right.
It's clear. It's clear. Continuing along the same line, social dominance theory explains the mechanism of group hierarchy oppression using three basic mechanisms. One, aggregated individual discrimination, ordinary discrimination. Aggregated institutional discrimination, discrimination by government and businesses institutions. So now you can see now, and this is really interesting because I remember early on in the kingdom where it was a particular, we were called together and there was some discussions about how did the Rothschilds get, in control of the economics like this. But then right after that, they came out with a book, and I have it around here someplace now. I'm trying to think of the name as I mentioned it. But what it was given the, the scale, the wages, between the male and the female, between the black and the white, and it was a particular time during the 60s, you understand, and this was very key. This is why, they created the necessity of, the two-job system. One job was not, enough for families to survive on. And particularly, with trying to go to school and college. So now you got what? Two jobs, you understand? By both the male and the female in the house.
Right.
And they just allowing the children to raise themselves if it's children involved, or the babysitter. Oh, this was about economics, family, and control. And so we go on to see how, women were complaining about the jobs that they were, because they were going to school, compulsory education. They was complaining about why their wages, wouldn't be, comparative to, the male. They had the same, education-wise. So we can see how this has played out, just giving an example. Next point, systematic terror was police violence, death squads, etc. Behavioral symmetry, systematic out-group favoritism, systematic out-group favoritism or differences in minorities favored hegemony individual. Now, we look up, within the concept of minority, it can be misleading, because you say there are more black people, then the minority would be what? White people. They would be the minority. If you talk about minorities benefiting, but these terms always, again, let's go back to the Genesis, the good and the evil, the right and the wrong, this Yadabal, this whole idea of, dualism or duality or two ways of viewing things, we're going to always keep these conditions.
I see.
Yes, sir.
This minority doesn't have anything to do with numbers. It has to do with a legal classification of
So I got you right,
with
right.
within the collective family structure.
Oh, I agree. I agree 100%. Right.
You feel what I mean? So
No, no, I
when,
agree. Yeah,
yeah, when you classify it as a minority, you classify it as a child, someone that is not responsible within a legal framework, within a social framework, for making their own decisions by
it's the same.
themselves.
Right, right. I know it. That's kind of what you would call a minor, huh?
That's right, right. That goes right back to that hierarchical structure that
Right,
that we've all bought into. The man, God on the top, the man, then the woman,
right.
then the children.
No, excellent. That's absolutely
Right.
correct. Absolutely correct. Yeah, that's why I say it can be confusing,
That's right.
because they play the whole idea is two aspects of one coin,
That's
you
right.
know. And so when you play, you get caught up in the definitions, the power to define.
That's right.
Uh, Here we are. Okay, coming to the close. The word gender. The word gender. Now we can kind of given an understanding of what this dominance was about. So here we say gender. What is gender? This was the question. Understanding gender. It said, for many people, here we go again, more confusion. For many people, the term gender, quote in the quote, and sex, quote in the quote, are interchangeable.
That's right.
This idea has become so common, but now it didn't become common, but it wasn't common. It has become so common, particularly in Western societies, that it is rarely questioned. Yet biologically, sex and gender are different.
There you go.
It's not inherently connected to one's physical anatomy. So we see the social construct. Now, sex is biological and includes physical attributes such as sex chromosome, gonads, sex hormones, internal reproductive structures, and external genitalia. At birth, it is used to identify individuals as male or female.
Right.
Gender, on the other hand, is far more complicated. This is why, we brought this up, gender, but when you hear feminist, you all automatically get into the gender aspect.
That's correct.
And that's the danger of what I saw in the movie, that it really has to be gone over and explained so that everybody will be clear on it. Continuing on. Gender, on the other hand, is far more complicated. Along with one's physical traits, it is the complex interrelationship between those traits and one's internal sense of self as male, female, both or neither, as well as one's outward representation and behaviors related to that perception. I'm going to read that again.
Please do.
On the other hand, is far more complicated. Along with one's physical traits, it is the complex interrelationship between those traits, the physical traits, and one's internal sense of self as male, female. Now I'm gonna stop right there. Now, how many people understand that the concept of male, female as one entity within themselves makes a whole? This is what the statement was made in the very beginning of the documentary.
That's correct.
It stated that man could not express his what fears except he was whole. And yet his brothers in jail, they had no idea to express the things that they were going through, you know, in the world before they became knowledgeable of the concept of feminist, you know, and masculinity and hierarchy. They had no idea of it. So now, when we go back, you know, we're talking about, you know, whether it's a male, anything, lion, horse, you know, cow, doesn't matter. It as the opposite sex would be what? Female. But now we start talking about gender, you know, and they can now become interchangeable. You don't know what people are talking about. We'll have no idea.
That's right.
So let me read it. Gender, on the other hand, is far more complicated. Along with one's physical traits, it is the complex interrelationship. Complex interrelationship. So what is this complex interrelationship between those physical traits and one's internal sense of self as male and female? That's the oneness, that's the wholeness that we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
It says, both are neither, as well as one's outward presentations and behaviors related to that presumption. So we find ourselves under this, you know, profoundly, you know, intellectual world, you know, of social dominance, and we being a simple people, you know, because the objective was to keep our true knowledge of self, you know, and who we really are and where we really come from, you know, concealed and hid from us. They could run these kind of things and they would get you trapped in agreeing with the what? Objectives and directions of what? Being what? Intellectually astute in a social matrix that is what? Created, you understand, to maintain you being what? Dominated and controlled by what? Higher interest group. So with that, we're going to close on that point. If any explanations to enlighten that, to expand upon that further, please, question, let's go ahead with it.
Hey, Nasik.
Nasik.
Go ahead, you can.
Yeah.
Monkel?
Yes, sir.
I'm
Go ahead.
gonna I'm gonna expand on that by uh, uh, proposing a question just to the brothers, first of all. But I want everyone to consider this. We have to ask ourselves a question: why would we have a concern with a woman over us? All right, I'm going to state that.
Right.
Why would
Eitai.
any of us have a concern with a woman over us? And you know, because all of us came into this world through a woman. That's number one.
Mm-hmm.
Number
Mm-hmm.
one.
Secondly, before you knew who you were,
Right.
a woman had 100% control over you.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely
Now,
right.
Mm-hmm.
now
Mm-hmm.
either that is true or somebody you got a different story.
Right.
Right.
But I would feel that it was safe to say that that is 100% true.
Absolutely, yeah.
And when we
Mm-hmm.
look at the way that we were reared,
Right.
the influences, no matter what type of structure we came from, everybody didn't come, from single parent homes, now see, especially in our generation.
Right, right.
But it was those grandmothers, those mothers, those aunts that exercised that what? Control over us in our formative
Mm-hmm.
years.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now, see,
Yes.
even before it was necessary for the woman to what? Go out into the work world.
Mm-hmm.
Now, either that is true in a general sense or it's not.
Eitai,
Go ahead.
I'd like to add to that because that's and you was right in my head on that one
Uh-huh.
because because um it ties into that in our early stages of development we had the matriarchic um construct within the family,
Yes, sir.
the mother, the aunt, the grandmothers,
That's
you know
correct.
but it wasn't until we went into the school system that that knowledge pointed to what Nasik was talking about, economics.
That's correct.
See, once we got in that school system, then the thinking was based on economics, which was the patriotic, which is the patriotic construct.
Correct.
So as we got into junior high school, now we thinking, okay, I'm gonna become an entrepreneur because I want to be a millionaire, you know. And and we see the whole dynamic. So my thing is that those brothers on this call shouldn't have a problem being guided by a woman because a woman, her focus is not making money. Her focus is nurturing, compassion, guiding, you know.
Correct.
So this organic reality that we are in right now and developing has to also uh, uh, be governed. The dedication track, as I put it right now, should that also should be governed by women because it won't be focused on money. It'll be focused more on the um uh how can I define it? More on family, um about sharing, caring, and stuff like that. So when you do um develop a economic base, it's not based on greed. It's based on sharing and giving.
Correct.
That's how I'm perceiving.
Right. Well, let's move backwards a little bit. Good points, Malkia. Let's move backwards outside of a social construct. Now, see, because this is where the real organic understanding of this is going to be found.
Yeah. Right.
The
Right.
the aspect of our birth should speak volumes to us.
Mm-hmm.
The aspect of
Mm-hmm.
each of our birth should speak volumes. And that does not have to do with anything social, cultural, religious, political, none of that, now see.
Yeah. Right.
The fact of the matter is we all got here by way of a woman. All right?
Just a
So
fact.
now
Mm-hmm.
let's move backwards. Let's move backwards from the now That is a role that now see, I mean, you can't choose that.
No.
The organic reality chooses that.
Yeah.
It is the energetic property of the feminine, whether it's in the cosmic or in the physical, to do what? Produce and sustain life at the very elemental stages.
No, that's absolutely
Now,
correct.
that's an absolute truth.
Right.
That's an absolute truth.
Yeah.
Now, now, see, anything after that is a simulation. Any role,
Right.
any role that you want to put, that society wants to define the femininity as, that's an add-on. That's a simulation.
Yeah.
This is what we have to understand. This is what I mean, this we can, like Nasik just did, we can give the history of how the definitions came through under what Nasik defined as social domination. We can trace that back to religious domination, cultural domination, and trace it, Nasik, where you began in the 60s, where again this thing got something organic, something energetic. What? There was a copy made of it.
Right.
And we can be very specific, even looking back to the laws that were passed, the amendments that were made, the civil rights legislation.
All of that, yeah.
That don't even benefit us today.
Not a bit.
It benefits the white woman and gay people.
Yeah.
And the homosexual agenda.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we have to, I think our perception has been clouded a little bit by this.
No question.
And the issue, Nasik, I think you framed it perfectly. The sisters, they wasn't on that like that in terms of the movement. They were energetically energizing that movement.
Yeah.
From a quote unquote spiritual aspect, giving birth to it. Y'all look at the news now. They can't produce anything, Nasik. Through except force. No power can be generated. I mean, you articulated it perfectly. And it was articulated in the book of Numbers as well, where they counted or numbered all the males. What was the requirement? 20 years of age that could go to war.
Right.
Why would they need to go to war? Why would they need to be? You articulated it. Because they had to what? Protect the hierarchy that was being established. And specifically the male-dominated hierarchy. Although these things, right.
Excellent, Eitai. This is a subject that you can see that, as we got into it, it began to mushroom. You can see it's not a small subject. It's a subject really, and we're going to need to go over this again.
Absolutely.
Yeah, this is not the end of it, because I see now that we've gotten into it, you can see the magnitude of what has been established. And again, I have to go back and say, you cannot sit here on wherever you are online and say the European was this smart, he came up with this idea.
Right. That's right.
Other than that, there's no way we're going to defeat him then.
Right.
Came up with it. There's no way even though we've been given the knowledge, you still will not defeat him now.
Right.
because he's still got the upper hand if you say he created it.
That's right. Now see, that is perfect. Yeah, we're gonna have to unpack this because
Yeah.
you because yeah, this is a lot bigger,
Yeah.
and we have to
Yeah,
put this in the proper framework.
Can't Eitai,
Excellent.
because my thing is how in this organic realm now, and how you eloquently put it, going back to us coming from a woman. So now how do we maintain that organic energy, that organic rhythm, you know, as we move forward? See what I'm saying?
I
My,
hear perfectly what you're saying. Go ahead, Nasik.
my God, I really think, again, what we've been saying in terms of the feminine element, and I'm saying
Mhm.
element, so because I don't want to say woman,
Right.
I'm saying
Hmm.
feminine element in the organic reality is what? Moving according to the cycle of the organic structure.
That's
Now, what we
correct.
have to understand, not to
Hmm.
get caught in the gender and
That's right.
sex of it, to understand it and just what? Continue to flow with it. And if we do, we will be in complete harmony.
That's
You know,
correct.
you won't see yourself as one thing or another. You'll understand that you are the holistic element
That's
of the organic reality.
that's
You
right.
So
follow?
absolutely. So now you see why I posed that question, because
Yeah.
a lot of people on this call may not even uh uh understood that until you brought that out just like that.
See,
No,
That's why I posed that question.
Malkiel,
yeah,
Malkiel,
Yes.
the underlying concern, now see, for this is legitimate just because of what you just stated, that the organic reality simulates I mean the simulated reality follows very close. It can't help but follow very closely to the organic reality that it is mimicking.
knock on,
Hmm.
Eitai, knock
So,
Hmm.
on.
so
Hmm.
Right.
if we stay in the mindset of
Hmm.
even like this, that my woman is someone separate from me, or the
Mistake.
or the feminine element taken a little bit higher
Hmm.
is separate from the male, and we start to discuss these things from a social perspective, or from a religious perspective, or from a political perspective, or cultural, man, we done
Yeah,
lost. We done
that's
lost.
right.
Yes. Yes.
Right.
Because
Yes.
Right.
as soon as we get into the cultural, the social, and start to define these things on that basis, we're back into male versus
Yeah.
female.
Right. Right.
Right.
We're
Right.
right back into duality.
Right back
Hmm.
in. Right back
Right.
in.
Right. And
So
see,
Right.
and again, this portion that we discussing today, I think is probably um the most important thing that we are discussing right now, because this right here is going to give us a greater understanding and a greater flow of this organic reality that we are establishing right now.
and Nasik, the question that the statement that Malkiel made, about continuing this forward with momentum. I mean, again, very, very important, very profound.
Yeah.
But I mean, we've laid a groundwork here, uh, and a basis for a continuing discussion, continuing continually to observe this, and to deconstruct this, man,
Mm-hmm.
and to go inside to do this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Again, if we are still thinking of ourselves as either or,
Right.
like Nasik
Right.
said, either male or female, we understand how we manifested here, how we
Mm-hmm.
emanated here.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that, I mean, if you're confused about that, then I don't know what we can do for you. But I'm simply stating that that does not have to be established. We have to go inside and connect with that feminine element, Nasi, as males,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right.
and
Right.
Absolutely.
and connect with the male, at the same time, and balance those things.
Yes.
Right.
Balance those
Yeah.
things,
Yes.
because the imbalance becomes feminism. It becomes
Yes.
Yeah.
radical feminism,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
you know, and it becomes homosexuality,
Right.
and we understand that those things have been politicized, and now that they're being socialized and being made what culturally acceptable.
Yeah.
So
Now,
that's the okie doke.
yeah.
We
Just another point. Simple. Again, we got to understand the purpose of language. Now, we got to understand when we say language, we're not talking about Hebrew, English, Greek. We're talking about the method of expressing oneself or explaining
correct.
what you would call the diversities or what appear to be obvious similarities or to be, concepts that are not similar. We find ourselves dealing with language in the sense of what you say, language was created, to um, between the action, your actions, and to divide your purpose, you understand, from one another. In other words, your purpose and your action get divided. Once that happens,
Yes.
then you understand you didn't fall victim to duality.
That's
We
correct.
Yes.
can never our action and our purpose to be separated,
Yes.
never will. So wholeness is a language that
Yes,
tends to what? Give us the understanding, but we have to be careful when we start to explain things into wholeness because the language was
Right.
what?
Yes.
Created to what? Divide and separate things.
Yes.
right.
It's not easy, but we're going to do it.
No
That's
question.
You know.
correct.
No doubt.
But yeah,
Amari.
yeah, excellent start to this, Nasi.
Amari.
Is that a Mario on the plane?
Yeah, that's it, Amari.
Mario on the boy. That's what I'm talking about. Use the technology, boy. I'm telling you.
Yeah, go and enjoy yourself, brother. But let's ask the questions. Any sisters online that got any questions or any points they want to bring forward? Don't be shy.
Yeah, that's who we
Yes.
want to hear
Yes.
from.
Yes. Please.
All right, we'll keep revisiting this idea because we know it's complex. It's very complex.